Hi, I'm Richard Brown, and I'm a philosopher. And today I found out is World Philosophy Day. I woke up today and people started saying World Philosophy Day. I was like, what the fuck is that? World Philosophy Day, is that a thing? I don't know. Let's check it out. So if we World Philosophy Day, what the fuck is World Philosophy? Thursday, November 18th. Check. The United Nations. World Philosophy Day was introduced in 2002 by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. So I was kind of totally unaware of this. Interesting. These are the objectives of World Philosophy Day: to renew the national, sub-regional, regional, and international commitment to philosophy. That's interesting because I do find that people are quite disparaging of philosophy, even while they're doing it. And even I, myself, my blog is called Philosophy Sucks. And there's multiple reasons why I named it that, but one of them is because I like science. Philosophy does sometimes feel like you're spinning your wheels when you're not in contact with the sciences. So it's interesting that they say that this philosophical analysis, research, and studies is going to help us respond to the issues confronting humanity. So certainly I think that in my area of consciousness and AI and singularity and all that stuff that I like to talk about, I think those are important issues which society should respond to. And we do need more critical thinking and engagement, and philosophy is at this point in an extremely useful position to get people thinking about the future of AI, the threat it may or may not pose, and et cetera. Okay, it's World Philosophy Day. It's interesting to have these reflections on a day like today, because I don't, the philosophy that let's see, how do I put this? The state of philosophy online at the current moment, at least in some areas, is quite confrontational. And there is a kind of very combative, like you're getting owned, it got destroyed. Sometimes I like to joke and say it's vaping the ops, philosophy as vaping the ops. So we don't smoke ops. So we don't smoke ops. And of course, I don't know how much you guys know about drill music or the scene in New York, but it's a little bit scary what's happening in real life, but the music is good. And I wish these talented musicians would focus on music, because that I really can get behind. But anyway, but there is a sense in which philosophy can adopt a kind of similar attitude where you're vaping ops, sliding on opponents, and just, destroying them with your arguments, your reason. And, there's this kind of joke I think it was Fodor who said that your goal was to give an argument so good that the person's head exploded if they didn't accept the conclusion or something like that. I forget, I should have looked that up, but there's that kind of, and when I first moved to New York, that's how it felt. I came from the University of Connecticut, where it was very friendly and everybody had an attitude of cooperation, and they would have these weekly brown bag meetings, the faculty and the graduate students and whoever else, and open discussion about works in progress, where the goal was not to criticize, but someone to present some ideas and say, how can we help you work on this? Like, where are you stuck and what are you thinking about? And maybe we can all sort of probe it out together. And of course, sometimes there would be arguments, and that's what philosophers do. But the goal wasn't to score points or tear down, but to try to help build up. And then I moved from Connecticut to New York for reasons we could discuss later, but coming from San Francisco, living in Connecticut was not my cup of tea. Let's just say that. And New York was more my style, I thought, at least. If I came, I wanted to, a vegetarian, a musician. It was hard. I got by. Anyway, so I came to New York, and the vibe and philosophy was very much like this Wild West point scoring. You could be at a seminar, and it felt like the goal wasn't really to explore the issues, but to prove how smart you were and make other people look like they weren't as intelligent. So if someone said something, they'd be like jumping on them, and then later be like, oh, that guy asked a really dumb question, or oh, can you believe it? And that attitude, that vibe was very intimidating. Now, of course, with someone like me from my background, I was a person who was physically abused at home, ran away, put in group homes, got into fights a lot, gravitated towards death metal and the mosh pits, skating. And so for me, that kind of rough and tumble engagement, I didn't mind it. And I sort of enjoyed, and I've been guilty of engaging in that way. But I really do think that the Connecticut model, if I could call it that, is much more conducive to doing philosophy. And this kind of thing that is being talked about here in the World Philosophy Day is much more the sort of thing that I appreciate, as opposed to that, like, you got destroyed, or that, I remember when I was a young graduate student, I would like, oh yeah, I want to see Dennett debate so-and-so and just like see what happens when like these two people with opposite views just, and I've been in the room when like people, the stories are legendary. Some of them are, I won't repeat, but there's some quite things that I thought were cool back in the day where someone just got destroyed by Fodor or by Block or whoever. Just like, being mean. Like I remember one comment in particular where someone was saying, and they were saying something and they paused and they said, let me say more about that. And someone said, say less. It's kind of funny in the moment, but that person felt bad afterwards. I know that person. And this was in a public setting. And this is why I think the kind of Socrates model of doing philosophy is dangerous. And so Socrates was well known for rolling up on people and making them feel stupid, belittling them. The real Socratic dialogues always end with someone being very angry. The Euthyphro is a good example. At the end, he says, not I'm wrong, Socrates, certainly you're right, but Socrates, you're making the worst argument appear better. And I feel like you're like making the statues move around when they're not moving. In other words, you're just playing tricks on me, dude. You're like running circles around me, and it feels like you're just like, you're not helping me understand why I'm wrong. Maybe I'm reading too much into Euthyphro. We should actually I'm not going to go to the text and read any dialogue to you. But anyway, so you get the point. That model, and Socrates is often held up as the paradigm of philosophical engagement. And of course, I understand what the point of the Socratic dialogue was. It was to get the person to the point where they admitted they didn't know, because the dialogues always start with someone saying, look, Socrates, the answer is obvious, it's blah. And then Socrates runs circles around them. And the person at the end is supposed to go, look, I don't know anymore. And then Socrates thinks the real work can begin. Now you can start to say, do the Connecticut thing, where you start to say, what is the answer? And if you make it past book 1 of the Republic, and in fact, actually, in the book 1 of the Republic's an interesting example, because there you do kind of get the feeling that people are talking about, if you don't know about book 1 of the Republic written by Plato, it's got a bunch of people sitting around talking about justice. And you do get the feeling there's this kind of collaborative thing going on where they're talking about, different definitions, and Socrates is saying, what about this? What about that? And then suddenly this guy in the back, Thrasymachus, says, oh, come on, guys, the answer's obvious. Don't you know what the fucking answer is? Like, dude, what the bloody hell? In Greek. And of course, that person is Thrasymachus. And Thrasymachus busts into the scene sort of saying, look, the answer is obvious. And then Socrates says, okay, so let me take you down. And he engages in this playful sort of way with Thrasymachus, who is a sophist, and argues that, basically might makes right, you might think. And anyway, my point is that he, again, the conclusion is that Thrasymachus is pissed off. And the way human psychology seems to work is that if you in public make someone feel stupid in front of a lot of people, that's not going to get them to change their mind. It's going to get them to think you're an asshole and double down on their position. So I do think a lot of this sort of, and don't get me wrong, I have been guilty of this. I am not trying to be more than I am. There's video evidence of me acting this way. And many people that I know can vouch for the fact that in my youth, I was very aggressive and was like, dude, what the fuck? And like, yeah, that is like something that I don't appreciate as much as I used to, because I don't think it really gets at how complex these issues are, or what the point of a philosophy is. I do think exploring conceptual space, I've often like mapped it to like, a conceptual space, a knot, where the cosmonauts of conceptual space want to map out the connections between ideas. Where can you get to if you start here? Where can you get to? So I think that way of thinking about philosophy is useful. It is an important way of thinking about what philosophy does, but I don't think it's the main thing. Because I think the main thing that philosophy contributes is self-examination. I still believe that in that Socratic idea that the key to philosophy is know thyself, that it's a kind of critical self-reflection, and that you should be thinking about what justifies your positions. I think that the primary person you should be arguing with is yourself. And arguing with other people is really just a proxy for that. So often when I'm arguing with someone, I'm taking a position maybe I don't fully agree with, but I sort of have some sympathy towards it. And I want to see what the objections are. And so a lot of times people will say, oh, well, you think that's true. And I'm like, no, I don't think it's true. I just think it's obviously false. And I want to know what the objections to it are. So I'm really arguing with myself. It's just that you're smarter than me. So I'm using you as a better me. I'm using you as a way of trying to evaluate my own beliefs. And by doing that over and over, I come to think, okay, so what should I be accepting? And I think that's the primary goal of philosophy, is this critical self-examination. And if people did that more, then we would engage with others in a different way. I think we would engage with others in a more constructive way, where the goal was to try to help them analyze their own beliefs, right? So I'm playing a better you, in other words. When we're arguing, I'm trying to present to you considerations that should get you to reflect on your own beliefs and think about why you hold them. But oftentimes, especially online, that doesn't seem to be the way people are engaging. They're engaging in this more like strategic way, where their goal is to score points or to undermine you rhetorically. And I know, like I've said, I've been guilty of that as well. So if I am doing that, please call me out on it. We got to work on this together. So, well, anyway, this is already getting too long, and I've already gone on and on and on. So I'll end it here. But World Philosophy Day, yes.